So, it's 1995.
Is it?
Yeah. You're 24.
Right.
Right. It's like the year before Offshore was to emerge.
Yeah.
What's the 24-year-old Nick Bryce got up to now?
He's working in a horrendous sort of quick print kind of place. Having a altogether rather demoralising time because I left art college and thought I was going to do all these wacky designs and ended up sort of just doing business cards for the butcher around the corner and was having a pretty depressing time of things. And obviously I've been fiddling with synths and studio since like sort of the age of sort of 11 or 12, so I you know, that was like the side project while I was trying to make a living, I guess, you know.
So a lot of people would be interested in the fact that you got, so it's a year before Offshore came. So how long was that take to formulate? I mean, was that were you working on that? Was it a long period of time?
Actually, no. I mean, Offshore wasn't like this pregnant thing that was happening. You know, a baby that was waiting to be born. That was written really very quickly. It was actually an EP of stuff that I put together with Leo, who I was working with. No, I went to my parents and I said to them, "Listen, can you support me for 3 months? I want to have a go at this, you know, because I felt that, you know, I always felt like I could do it, you know, but it was incredibly difficult to, you know, you never sort of go along to your careers officer at school and say, "Look, I'm going to be a you know, multi-million selling DJ," and there is no path like that, and you just can't. I just kind of had a crack at it, and it wasn't actually Offshore that came first. It was Disco Citizens was Right Here, Right Now. That was the first thing, and that went top 40, and it was my first ever thing, and it went top 40, and it was like, and it's still today my most cherished moment because I proved that some lunatic art student from Buckinghamshire can actually, you know, you can obtain the potentially unobtainable and do something that you only see in the papers or stars, you know, or on telly, you know.
And then Offshore happens. 1996 comes out, and
yeah,
the first version of it, because then we got Offshore '97. So
well, it was you know, Offshore wasn't written to be a dance record. It wasn't written like that at all. It was a down tempo. It was part of an EP. It was a beautiful kind of piece of music, and I think that's why it sounds like it does. It wasn't trying to be something, and I remember getting all these emails and people kind of getting in contact saying, you know, Sasha and Digweed are playing it with a 4x4 beat as their last track and trying to make it into a dance record. I was like, oh crikey, so I did a Disco Citizens remix on it, and the whole thing went a bit nuts. It ends up on the A-list at Radio 1, and your world goes a bit topsy-turvy, really.
So it was quite a long build. It was quite in some ways from what the original one was.
Oh yeah. It came out on the EP, and then it was probably a 6 to 8 month kind of gestation period, I think.
And then, so how did that go into the first album?
I'm not answering any more questions.
Okay. Well, why don't we do something that's not been done on audio interviews, and we'll sign them.
Okay.
And let everybody guess. But quickly, how does it get from that then? Who said to you, okay, let's do an album? Or did you say, right, I've got an album's worth of material? Was that quick as well?
There was stuff flying about, yeah. What you got to remember, how things were done back then was very, very different though. The technology wasn't there to stop and start tracks. You started it, and the mixing desk was set, and the computer, so you couldn't jump back and forth and have all these ideas. So you started something and you finished it in one go. I can remember Salt Water being this horrendous monster. I had to hire an extra mixing desk just to get the thing to sound right, and it was on the desk for months and months and months and months, you know, until it was done. So it's always very difficult to get perspective on those sort of things. But I was always an album artist. I wasn't always doing, you know, I wasn't always about trying to write hit singles, although I did feel a lot of pressure after the initial hits, you know, to come back with another hit, because that's what people want. They want something like that. But I was kind of more trying to be a bit more organic and be a bit weird, really.
And Saltwater, which, you know, then was the kind of next big, I guess, stepping stone. I mean, so that was something where you've become kind of known for in putting something that's perhaps in people's minds together with a piece of music. So where you first hear the vocal, and what turned you?
I was very familiar with the Clanad vocal, but you couldn't time stretch or utilize those or sample those vocals because they were running at, I don't know, something like 80 BPM, and back then we were doing dance records at 132 BPM plus, and also I didn't really want to sort of jump on that bandwagon. I wanted to write a new melody on top of that and work with Moya and the Clanad people, so that was like an integral project, and I just think it's just part and parcel of what dance culture is. Creativity comes by hijacking something and putting it through a mangler and it coming out a different way, and that's kind of what that record was,
But it really it's interesting because there's parts where your introduction was offshore and people kind of went, oh yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Although the Disco Citizens things that happened, but then Saltwater kind of brought it another level up, didn't it? I mean, you'd suddenly become noticeable to the UK public and more people than just the dance world.
Yeah, I hammer on about these things all the time, and particularly now in this era that we're existing. For me, all those records that I wrote back in that time were all about melody, and they were evocative, and the melody made you feel a certain way, and it was. I think that's something that's becoming a rarity, in today's culture, and that was what was important about it. And I also felt it was genreless,
Well, the interesting thing is, you said something earlier, of course, which is a very valid point, that you wanted to make albums. I mean, nowadays it's a concept that isn't really in people's psyche because we have tracks.
Yeah, well, we've destroyed the album somehow.
Yeah, which was the complete piece of art, if you want to be pretentious about it.
Yeah, I understand completely what's happened to the album, and but it was a body of work. And it had a flow to it. The Chicane ethos has always been a flow, and I come from that kind of soundtrack kind of background where things flow and they have pace, and it's not just about 20 tracks of hits and stuff. But I guess.
So Saltwater was when? When did that kind of hit?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I'm very, very old and tired.
Yeah, but so then
1998, I think.
We're skipping through things quickly, and then Far From the Madding Crowd came out. Hey, out there, doing stuff, and you were really very quickly moved on to tracks for Behind the Sun. How did the Bryan Adams thing come about? Because as I said earlier, one of the things about you is people look at people you've worked with and they are kind of out there. So I believe there's a funny story about Bryan.
Oh God, that's quite.
Well, I've heard him tell it. But I'm going to let you tell
There's a whole bunch of funny stories about Bryan, most of which we can't talk about.
No, we can't.
Involving Ibiza and I can't. Yeah, let's not go there. He rang up, and I was at that point. I was managed by my mum in my very early burgeoning career, and my mum being essentially my mother took the call, and Bryan rang up about wanting to work with me on a remix for a track of his called Cloud Number 9, and Mum was like, oh yes, and who are you? And she's like, Bryan, yes. And she's writing down Bryan Adams. Okay, we'll get back to you. So I come in, I don't know, half an hour after the call, and Mum says to me, oh, this fella called Bryan's been on the phone about wanting to do a track together. And I was like, okay, what's his name? Adams, Bryan Adams. And I'm walking up the stairs, and I sort of stop, and I sort of look across, and I say something. I can't remember exactly what I said. What did he sound like? And she went, he kind of sounded American. Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams just rung, yes. And I sort of lost it at that point. I went, what do you mean? It sort of went on from there, and Bryan's never let me forget that thing, really. But so that's kind of how that came about. And I remixed Cloud Number 9 for him, which was a single, and I've been working on Don't Give Up with Ray Hedges, my cohort producer at the time, and it just so happened that I played it to Bryan. I said, look, I had this idea for a melody. And before you knew it, it was done, and it sounded amazing.
But can I stop you? Is this true? I'm sure either you or Bryan told me that there was a different chorus, or there was some different.
Yeah. There was an original. there was an original melody, and I can remember singing it down the phone. It's me and Ray Hedges now, and we've got the phone, and we're singing it. It sounds insane, doesn't it? We're singing it down to Brian. I'm saying, right, it goes like this, and I remember cocking it up, and he goes, "It's not a good sign, guys." I'm thinking, oh God, this is awful. We had a totally different chorus, and but that's how that's how it is. What most people don't know is that I'm awful with the music, and it's a constantly evolving thing. I have versions of classic records which I have still developed, and I have versions of some of these hits that no one else has, because I always fiddle with it, and they do different things.
You're awful with the music.
Well, you can't. It just gets taken away from me, because I'll fiddle forever. Otherwise, nothing will ever be released. It'd be just insanity. Yes. So, sometimes the music is modular, and I will have some choruses, some verses, some stuff, and sometimes I slot different things in different places, and you see how it sounds.
Okay, so that would, but Don't Give Up was a hit. I believe it was a hit in 16 countries at least. It was number one in the UK, and I can remember being at Top of Pops with you and Brian.
Oh God!
And I remember you playing it to me actually the first time in the studio over in Chalfont, and thinking, yeah, that sounds like a number one, and it did. It went to number one. Yeah, massive hit.
It was mental. Yeah.
Behind the Sun, the album it was on, went top 5.
We all went gold.
Went gold. Yeah. And there was that that mad album launch at the ICA.
Oh God, yeah.
With a band that there was probably 200 people on the stage. And I remember Snake Davis playing sax, and there was lots of different. But anyway, so that happened, and then the what people probably don't know about you, or some people may not know, is that Chicane was and still is a band. I mean,
Oh yeah, it was always a band. I mean, I've only really been sort of DJing, prolifically the last sort of 5 years. It's always been a band, but Chicane is a peculiar shape in the sense that if you took someone like, let's take sort of comparison, Faithless were doing a fairly similar thing, but they have a very obvious frontman visually and sonically. Chicane is a different thing. It's more nomadic, and I always, it's not as prolific and obvious to people because we don't have a lead singer, and the band is always floating about, but I work with a different producer or a different vocalist all the time, and it's just kind of my nature. I guess it's quite promiscuous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I remember when I first started working with you, people used to say to me, "What's it like live?" And I'd say it's a bit like an old jazz band.
Really?
Because people like, Simon Clarke used to play flute, used to play sax, and people would walk on and walk off, and singers, there was 3 singers at one point, and they'd come on and do something, and then they'd stroll off.
It was pretty hairy. I mean,
it was.
I mean, playing dance music live back in the early days was absolutely horrendously nightmarishly difficult. We took it to the nth degree, to the extent that the whole thing was completely live at one point, where we had electronic drums re-triggering the original kick and snare from the original tracks, and I had extra keyboard players, and it was a nosebleed, and it became this monster on tour and too expensive to move around. And I can remember, we did a tour of Australia, a small tour of Australia, and we were about 15 people. You can only imagine what it costs to move 15 people up in and around, back and forth to Australia. It's a very expensive business, and so I had to have most of them shot, really.
Yeah,
it's a messy business, but now I'm making much more money.
Yeah, which is the main thing.
I wish.
But we send flowers and wreaths. It's cool. Well, we jumping forward a bit. So there was a series of studio albums that followed after that. There was a break because there was a contretemps.
Oh yeah, we had some good fun.
There was also an album that didn't get released because of,
that was good fun as well.
Yeah, various points.
Character building, I think of that.
Yeah, character building. And then albums started to flow again. There was the studio album, and to jump forward a little bit, weirdly, having been quite outspoken about DJs, you decided to DJ. I know we took off to Cebu in an island in the Philippines to see if it would all work.
Yeah, I mean, let me explain my. I still have quite a passionate hatred of the DJ, even being one myself. I think, you know, when dance music first exploded, back in the sort of late 90s going into the early 2000s, I can remember we had situations where DJs were being paid crazy money. So you had situations where the guy playing the record was being paid more money to play the record than the guy that actually made the record got in the first place, which is basically the tail wagging the dog. I found that kind of a bit weird, and there's also that, you know, there's a lot of DJs that kind of, you look like they're gleaning something from the record and like it's partly theirs, and there's all the kind of what's the right word? You know, it's very hedonistic, and you know, it's a very narcissistic business, DJ. So it's all about me. So as you can see, I couldn't beat them, so I've joined them, but you know, obviously I was very much immersed in that culture right at the beginning, and but fundamentally we were a band. You know, we were a band in that genre, and sadly we weren't able to destroy as many DJs upon the way as we would have liked to.
We tried.
There's a fair few current ones I could do with Vanova, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we probably can't mention.
Yeah, we can.
For legal reasons.
No, let's mention it, please.
Okay, all right. Let's not. You mime to me what they are, and I'll go from there. But. Studio. Okay, but one thing too. You're DJing. There's also, you know, I know you're writing a studio album.
Yeah.
And
sure.
so that's going to.
Well, never stop writing.
Yeah,
it's always
exactly. So there's new stuff coming out and developing all the time. But there's also Chicane Sunsets, which is a totally different. It's part of what you are, but it was the podcast and radio show.
Yeah.
What was the idea behind that?
I'll tell you what the idea was behind that. I'd started jockeying a bit and was really enjoying it. It was pretty liberating and refreshing, and it was a great way to sort of actually, you know, road test, you know, your demos and stuff. But I was going to start to develop my own show or night or whatever, and you know, I couldn't really feel that I had anything unique as a particular club thing, and it wasn't till I started to really think about what Chicane was, and that I basically have a foot in both camps. I'm known for sort of big room dance anthems, and also pretty blissed out, beautiful down tempo and mid tempo stuff. And it slowly started to dawn on me that instead of doing, say, a banging club night, the idea was to do a sunset show. So you know, Chicane encompasses all the elements that goes with that. So essentially, you don't have to be by the sea watching the sun go down. You know, we could be anywhere. But the ethos is that you start beautiful and slow, and you move it up tempo, and then you have a magic sunset moment. Sun goes down, and then bosh, we're off to the dance floor, and that's kind of the ethos of the whole thing. And to be honest, it's now a huge part of the week and a huge part of Chicane. At least 3 days of the week are sucked up by sunsets in the radio show, the filing of the tracks, and now sunsets on the slopes, which is becoming a huge thing. Residency in Dubai. You know, we need a few more Nick Broscuddles right now, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, we actually have a few. Yeah, we're going to bring them out in a minute.
The boys from Brazil?
Yeah, it's a bit like the boys from Brazil.
The boys from Chalfont St Giles?
Yeah, that'll be the way. Well, actually, I'll ask you questions. We were talking about the band. Favourite touring moment? I mean, there's loads of these, I know. I mean, or anything that springs to mind.
There's a couple of funny moments. Remember Natasha getting off tour bus somewhere in... Where were we? Greece, and she's desperate for a pee. We've got a toilet on board, but the Greek guy's got the door locked for some reason. So
EU regulations.
No wazzing on the bus.
Couldn't use it while we were moving.
So she'd gone out to have a wazz, but there was a whole incident involving a snake or something.
Yeah, she doesn't like snakes.
Not to trouser snake, a snake, and a lot of hilarity. And then moments later, the engine on the bus explodes and it catches fire. Stuff like that was kind of interesting. I won't mention Manila. We've talked about it too many times.
Yeah, there's lots of stories about Manila. There's also Moscow. I mean, a number of times, the hours spent in Moscow airport. There's the gaffer tape. I think we went to Siberia to do a show.
I can remember a certain keyboard player and technician coming back with some ladies they shouldn't have come back with, followed by the secret police and a lot of extremely ill humour.
That was a long time. Yeah, that involved Flavio.
Flavio and Tom decided to go and pick up some girls who weren't the right sort of girls.
No.
And
they were very drunk to give them.
They got followed back by the secret police to the hotel. The promoter went scatty. There was all sorts of badness going on.
Yeah, Flavio was throwing dollars at the police, saying, "You want money? I'll give you money.
You want some?"
Yeah. As I remember.
Yeah. There's lots of stuff like that.
Yeah, Manila's always been a good one, but I can remember. Let me see. There's been some crazy stuff going down.
There's been so many been doing it for 20 years. I mean,
well, also Australia. I mean, we always seem to end up in Perth, and there was Rottnest Island.
Oh yeah.
And going watching whales, which is lovely. So there's a nice side to it too. So, but moving off of that.
Yeah, very dull. Sorry.
Very dull. 20.
Yes.
20 years. I mean, it's amazing, really, when you think about it, because what we were talking about earlier in DJs and everything else around that is that now everything is such a quick turnover. And 20 years, I mean, it's amazing to think suddenly 20 years still in the business, still making records, still doing stuff, and a recent club #1.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
You know, did you ever think it would last 20 years?
I don't know. Gave it a thought. The thought that it's been 20 years right now kind of doesn't fill me with dread, but it fills me with slight confusion that it's been that long. I mean,
I think the public feel like that.
Yeah. Thank you for those kind words. I'd like to think, you know, we're still doing what we're doing because we love it. You know, we eat, sleep, breathe, drink music, and also, I'd like to think is that, you know, the music that we try and put together, it is heartfelt and evocative, and it's not throwaway or nonsense like that. We're in a very, you know, you don't want to sound jaded, but we have so many what I describe as milli vanilli DJs. We have fake this and fake that, and kind of people rigging, you know, popularity contests and and faking amount of followers on this and that, and it's just kind of pathetic. You know, it's really disheartening, and you know, I'd like to think what we do is kind of a real thing, and yeah, we're not making probably Calvin Harris money, but you know, it's what we love doing, you know, and it always has been, and that's probably why we're still doing it.
Well, there's some remixes on 22.
No, it's not. No.
Final.
No mixes. I've taken them all off.
Oh really?
Yeah, they've gone, mate.
Okay, there are no remixes on the new album.
There's no remixes.
No remixes at all. No, kind of finalising everything. But 20 itself, you got your choice of tracks because you know it's kind of your stepping stones through your career, I suppose, in some ways. But you also there were quite a few, I guess, young bucks who haven't been around 20 years who were quite interested in remixing stuff. Some of the classic tracks, and of course they haven't really been remixed. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I mean, Saltwater and things like that were made on 2-inch tape, presumably, and not on a computer.
No, it wasn't tape. It was DAT tape. We mastered everything to DAT tape, but it wasn't 2-inch tape. But it was everything was analog. There was nothing was really digital, and you used to have the cleaner, your mum, your dad pushing a fader up and down at the right moment to try and get the mix right, and you had about 30 takes, and it seems like absolute nightmare. Everything was running on an Atari STE. If any of you techies out there know what that is, that was the sequencing machine at the time, and I can remember some beautiful moments where you do these massive songs, you save them on floppies, and it'd save it all, but then you come back the next day to load it up, you go, not enough memory. So you then have to take your computer, expand the RAM on the computer. Cut a long story short, technology has come on such a long way and made things easier, but also the choices are wider, and it's the ears that operate it are really the most important thing still.
But that's an interesting point, because technology has come on, but it's also made it more accessible and taken away the hard work. And part of that means there are people that can now do stuff that maybe don't have the talent. But have the technology.
Absolutely. For instance, let's touch on one current genre which is thankfully fading, but EDM, electronic dance music. There's no ADM, no acoustic dance music.
No, I like the acoustic dance.
ADM.
All that okay, stuff.
Let's take that for instance. That's a very good example of people have learnt technically, and it's quite easy now, how to make records sound big, sound massive, loads of dynamics, so the record sounds absolutely huge. Big builds, in an arena they sound impressive, but whether or not they have any substance and any melody which makes you feel something is another thing altogether. And EDM has been based around kind of formulas and nasty kind of noise, really, and seems to have hoodwinked a generation of kids, but it's on the way out, and house music has returned, I believe.
Has it really? Well, that'll please a lot of people, I'm sure, somewhere down the line. So, like 20 years. Okay, look, let's talk about this. 20 years. I mean, you're probably not thinking, other than doing a new studio album.
Was that a general thought?
Well, yeah, I know.
You're probably not thinking.
I know you're never thinking, but what I was going to say. So, in which case, this question's completely stupid. Is that what you're not thinking about the future? You just think about the next album. And is that the way it is? It's just not really a conscious thing. I mean, I'm amazed at 20 years. I think 20 years has gone by incredibly quickly as it does.
It's just constant. It is just constant. I'm working all the time. Really, it's studio during the day, out on the road the weekends, and sunset stuff. So it's constant. There is a flow of stuff. So I'm probably halfway through the new album already. Some really, really beautiful stuff coming on. So the 20 years of Chicane album is not it's not drawing a line under it. It's just kind of, we're kind of shouting. Hang on.
Well, it's celebratory.
It's celebratory, but what was it you were saying about the next year? Something stupid.
Oh, I said it's the 21st year. I said, we used to do celebrations where it was like the 18th and the 21st was your coming of age. And I said the 21st is the coming of age.
We're not calling the album the coming of age.
Okay.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
All right. Okay. Well, what about coming or going? We don't know if we're.
That sounds.
In brackets.
That sounds
coming or going.
That sounds like dodgy. That sounds dodgy.
It does sound dodgy, but in the end, that's what it's about. Well, okay. So you don't have anything at the end to say to people apart from goodbye about the future. Do you have an insight?
The future's out there.
I hope so.
I think the Sunsets project is gathering crazy momentum, and I can see that very quickly becoming a festival kind of project, and it's already on sort of 60 to 70 stations around the world, and it does 250,000 downloads a month on iTunes as a podcast. That's growing, and it's really exciting, and it's really nice to see people are resonating with kind of what I'm trying to get across. That's growing and growing, and I'm going to continue writing music that I love, really, and until I can't, and that's kind of upwards and onwards.
All right, well that's it then. We'll stop there.
I'm going to go now.
Where are you going?
Home.
You don't know, do you?
Home. Do you know I've driven 700 miles to get here today?
Yeah, well, I've got to say I would have thought of that question.
700 miles. I got flashed by a camera, bro.
Yeah. Wait, did you really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Nice.
Wasn't.
Where?
I was somewhere on a French auto route. So I'm
they're on strike. They're always on strike. The cameras are on strike.
I'm going now, and I am.
Okay. All right, we'll turn it off then.
Abiento.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.